Tonight, we have a special guest joining us, the Us Lifting Us Economic Development Corporation, based out of Atlanta. They have a 10-point appeal plan for a new black economy. And let's welcome to the program Brother Hekima of Us Lifting Us. Brother Hekima, are you there?
I am, brother.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Glad to have you on our program. I know you had spoken with Brother Edge on several occasions. You never spoke to me. My name is Brother Elliott, and
Yes.
I'm just happy to welcome you to the program also.
Thank you.
Brother Hekima, you know, before we open up to deal with the 10 points, which is very important, and I'm going to let Brother Edge kind of steer the ship a little bit, tell us what made you and the other brothers that are involved start Us Lifting Us as an economic development group.
And there's sisters involved as well.
Okay.
We incubated a nonprofit in 2003, the African Community Centers for Unity and Self-Determination. And after several years of plowing, so to speak, of activity, it became obvious, and it seems to be obvious to many of us in communities throughout the country and, in fact, throughout the world, that we were not addressing the economic imperative seriously enough. And so in 2011, from the perch of our nonprofit, we put together a think tank, and then with bringing in quote-unquote experts, people who had been involved in different facets of the economic life of our community and looked at other communities and studying. And then in 2012, we formed formally Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative. It's a cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
The initial formation was as a C Corp, and we found out that that was the wrong designation. And then in 2013, we reformatted as Us Lifting Us Economic Development LLC. So we are a limited liability company. But we were answering the call, as many of us are, as to how would we reorganize and reformat ourselves to take advantage of our unique position where we are perched in the largest economy on the planet, or second, depending on how you look at it. And we were not able to show much for it. And so that was the nexus of ULU as an institution, and it just continued to grow. We were fortunate enough to have one of my comrades for over 40 years to travel with a delegation to Spain to study the Mondragon Cooperative in the Basque region there in Spain. And so he was available as a consultant. And then myself, my history, for a little bit, related to some aspects of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And so just pulling those pieces together, and with the goal, of course, we were clear in terms of what our objective was. Our objective was to develop a platform, a tool, a mechanism by which we could incrementally gain control of the economic life of our communities locally, regionally, nationally, and with some international implications. So because we were so clear, things just began to unfold. And the legal forms, the other forms in terms of structure, just began to open up to us, and we just began to put the pieces together. And so now we've launched the vessel, so to speak, so it's out in the water. And now we're on the high seas looking to build and bring other brothers and sisters and other formations into this formation, again, for the purpose of bringing back to our people, not just in the way of a document or a treaty, but in action, an exact method for how it is that we can gain control of the economic life of our communities.
Brother Hekima, we thank you for coming on tonight. This is Brother Reggie.
Thank you.
I've been able to go through a lot of the information that you have sent to me, and I wanted to ask you a brief question. When you mentioned your background with that Southern Cooperative, is that the cooperative with Ralph Page?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, Ralph is set down now. But
okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Before we get into the 10 points, tell us why is it important for Black people to think about Black cooperative economics in 2016 and moving forward?
Well, we don't think it's important. We think it's vitally necessary. The push for all of us to go into business and to support those businesses, in other words, entrepreneurship, Black business ownership, and the support of those, our position is that that activity does not, in and of itself, empower Black people. It may empower certain individuals, but it does not necessarily mean that an economy would emerge. I submit to you that at this point, we're going to have to deliberately engineer an economy within which we then do business with each other, because currently there is no steering mechanism, no rudder, so to speak, to our economic activity, such that we could predictably say what should be developed, what is being developed, the pace at which it's being developed. And so, but of course, in terms of any society, the economic aspect of that society is critical, because if the markets of that people are in the hands of another people, then ultimately that people are subservient to whoever controls the marketplace. And so in the discussion of Black power, of self-determination, of sovereignty, whatever the discussion is, if we don't have a handle on how we control a sizable percentage of the wealth that is around us and the production capacity, then if we're leaving that to another interest group, another business formations, then, and if the only levers that we have are electoral politics or to affect policy or to protest or to withdraw economically, but if we're not also controlling those dollars, those flows, that production, then we say that we will always be at the mercy of others. So it's an imperative. I think it's not only imperative for our people, it's an imperative for every community on the planet.
Okay.
We don't know that there's ever been any group that's risen to power and respectability while not also at the same time controlling the economics of their community or group.
Okay. Thank you for that response. We actually, I know you're familiar with the 1 Million Conscious Black Voters and Contributors movement. The Philadelphia local group just had an economic summit yesterday talking about just some of the things that you just laid out. What I want to do, I want to try to tie this in to some of your comments you just made, and also talk about the number one on the 10-point appeal. What we had discussed yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk about Black farmers in this country. And if you're talking about any of those things that you had mentioned, sovereignty, freedom, self-determination, or independence, these brothers and sisters that you hear online or travel around through this country speaking Black power, speaking about our oppressor, speaking about the things that are being done to us on a daily basis, if they're not talking about supporting they're African American farmers and growing their own food, then they're delusional, and they're stuck because they are being fed by their oppressor daily, and you can only do so much talking if you're being fed by your oppressor. So in point number one, we talk about as a black people, we take full responsibility for the economic destiny of our communities and nations. Give me a little further information on what that looks like for the ULU.
Well, of course, in that appeal and that 10-point appeal and plan, we have underlined take full responsibility. Your actions normally follow your intent. And if we're not committed and clearly intended to be masters of our situation, our social situation, then our actions are not going to follow. So that particular point sets the tone for economic empowerment and development. So the other points, all of the 10 points together, provide the skeleton or the framework from which we build the machinery to do what it is that we talk about doing. And, of course, that aim is to gain sufficient control of the economics of our community such that you would know it, I would know it, and everybody else on the planet would know that when referring to what we commonly call the black community, that's our turf, and that we got this. In other words, that we control to a large degree the economic life and activity of that community. So that point, number one, sets the tone, and certainly, just as a talking point or scenario, if someone is standing in your chest and have you pinned to the concrete, in other words, your back is to the concrete and they're standing in your chest and they're shouting insults at you or whatever, that's intentional. That's not by mistake. And so it's incorrect, in my opinion, to put the onus on the person who is intentionally standing in your chest, who wants you in that position. It's impractical. It's almost asinine that you would give that person some responsibility for your upliftment, for changing your condition when it's not a mistake. It's intentional. So then the onus is completely on us in that situation, and I think that's the situation we're in. It's not by mistake that we end up in the subservient, exploitive position that we're in. It's purely intentional. And so for a people who are in that position to then parcel out some responsibility to others, a particular one who has you in that position, parceling out to them some responsibility, in some cases, the majority of responsibility, that's a recipe for us staying exactly where we are. So that clause speaks to the fact that it's up to us. In other words, our name, us lifting us, economic development cooperative, because no one's going to do it but us.
Brother Hekima, and I want to let the listening audience know that they can go to www.usliftingus.com to see these 10 points that we're talking about this evening, the 10-point appeal and plan for the new black economy. We're going to take a break in another couple of minutes, but I want to get this question in, and if you want to take some time after the break, you can address it. Point 2 of the plan states black persons and black institutions, especially the black church, join together as members in a large-scale cooperatively owned business enterprise to pool our resources. That might seem to be a monumental task, looking at some of our churches now, especially these churches that are mega churches. But I see a new mindset coming on our people and on the black church, where you have black churches now that are interested in pooling our money, developing economy, and working with other black folks, and not just to build their own edifice, but to build our people as a whole. You mentioned in the beginning that a think tank was formed, which is a great idea. The majority of organizations don't start out that way. I think what you did, the emphasis or the edifice of what you did is excellent. But talk about that point, too, about black persons and black institutions, especially the church, joining together.
Yes. Martin Luther King, in one of his speeches when referring to the billions that flowed through our fingers, of course, it's into the more than $1 trillion now, and he made a profound statement. He says that that's power if you know how to pool it or how to aggregate it. And so what we have done is to develop a prescription, an exact method for how we pool those resources. And membership in ULU is not just for individuals. It's for individuals, married couples, and institutions. Churches can be members. Churches can be stockholders or stakeholders and have an equity position in ULU. And they can part of their motivation could be that they still want to contribute to their building fund. But while those funds are building, they could certainly park that money in ULU and help empower our community, and at a future point divest and pull their money out. But they, in the interim, could have realized some gain. So we're not thinking that all black churches, all black congregations, all pastors will warm up to this idea. We just know that that's a powerful institution. It would be a mistake for us not to seek to enfold them into any strategy that we had that is large as what we're talking about. We're talking about an operation that will quickly become the largest black enterprise in America and at a point become the largest black enterprise in the black world. And so when you start talking about revenues into the tens of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, and you just cannot afford not to have a strategy for including the black church. But I agree with you, it's not going to be easy, but what we do is just for those that are ready, you demonstrate and you prove and you expand and you grow, and then incrementally other persons, sometimes the parishioners in the church and sometimes a member of the deacon board and sometimes the pastor, and then in some cases the smaller churches who are able to reach a consensus early. So you just build. And of course, we know that that's not easy, but it's simple. You just have to build it, make sure that it's built solidly, that you bring in the necessary experts and spend the money to retain good talent, and you build. And you're conservative and you're not risky with our funds, and you just simply build. And we feel that the church, at least some portion of them, would be inclined to join with us. Of course, you remember the largest tract of land under black ownership in this country is owned by a church. The Shrines of the Black Madonna, and their 4,000 acres or 3,000 plus acres in Abbeville, South Carolina, is the largest single tract of land under black ownership, and that's a church.
We're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, you can get involved in the conversation by dialing 215-253-7263. That's 215-253-7263 on the listen-only line. If you want to get involved, just hit *61, and we'll try to recognize you. Tonight, our special guest, Brother Hekima, from Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative, LLC. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Time for an Awakening, and we're joined in conversation this evening with Brother Hekima of Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative. We're talking about the 10-point appeal plan for the new black economy. If you didn't catch the program from the beginning, you'll be able to go on to timeforanawakening.com and catch the podcast. You'll be able to see other podcasts up there from other past programs, other interesting articles. We'll be posting in the future, in the very near future, products that you can purchase. Black products that we use every day can be purchased from the site. Go to timeforanawakening.com in your address bar. And if you didn't catch the program from the beginning, you'll be able to catch it in its entirety on the podcast. Let's continue the conversation with our guest, Brother Hekima of US Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative. Brother Reg.
Brother Hekima, on point 3, you have this cooperatively owned business enterprise. There will be a reflection of our unique culture and interest in the world. Please explain that for us in the listening audience. What is the unique culture and interest in the world as far as the 10-point appeal and plan? What would that look like?
Yes.
What does it mean?
Unapologetically, this movement, this business form, should be an expression of us in all of its colors and gyrations and whatever. In other words, here in Atlanta, when we go to the section of town that's controlled by the Koreans, not only are the markings clear, I mean, it's in their language as well, and so it's reflective of their culture, and nobody's angry with them. And certainly when we develop our structures, they should be markers respecting our unique culture, but in particular our unique interests in the world. And part of that interest is to unite and connect with our brothers and sisters in Central and South America, the Caribbean, Africa, Europe, wherever we are. And so we're not sure what manifestations will emerge, but if we're talking about being self-determined, and so we're not creating something in the image of Europe or of Asia, but something reflective of who we are and who we have been in history. And again, some of our businesses will actually be modeled. Some of the interior decorators, some of the designers will be engaged to actually create an environment that is reflective of our culture. So how that pans out ultimately, but the foundation is that we're not creating a replica of a European dynamic. We're creating something that is uniquely us, comes out of us and our culture and our spirit.
Thank you, my brother. How is the cooperative going to be governed, and what would the legal form look like? This is on point number 4 if anyone's following us.
Yes.
Let's listen to the program.
Well, the legal structure is a limited liability company. Membership in ULU is $50 per year to be a member. And a member fills out the paperwork online or through the mail, pays the $50, and then we interview that person, and if that person is approved, then they are equal partners in a limited liability company. So they're members. Members use their membership to do 2 things in general: to elect a board of directors, and the board of directors will govern the day-to-day operations of the enterprise, and when appropriate would hire general managers or other product leaders to carry out the missions of the membership and the board. Also, members use their votes to ratify or approve any changes or modification to the basic documents. Mm-hmm. The basic documents are 2, the operating agreement and a values and ethics document that we've also created. And so, but members, and only members and not the public, also have the opportunity to acquire equity units in the company, investment units in the company, and but those are non-voting. Those are just simply an acquisition of an equity position in the company, and the benefit of that is that they're in a position to receive a direct return or dividend, as it would be called in a corporation. And so, for instance, you may become a member and acquire 10 units. A unit is $1,000. So if you acquired 10 units, then you'd have $10,000 invested in the operations and accounted for in your equity account. And let's say I acquired 1 unit, so I only put in $1,000, and another member couldn't afford 10 or 1. They're just a member. So all three of us would be equal in terms of power in the institution.
Okay.
But when it comes to a distribution, you would have 10 times what I would have. I would have 1 distribution. You would have 10 distributions. And this other member, who's just a $50 per year member, he would have no distribution because that person has not taken an equity position in the company. However, they're members. So that not only can they vote, they are equal position to you and I in terms of being hired an employee. And by the way, all of our businesses will be worker control, what we call secondary cooperatives. And that member also that didn't have any equity in the company could be in a position to, in addition to being employed by the co-op, could also be in a position to enter a contract or an agreement or arrangement to provide services for the enterprise. So the structure is an LLC, and if we Google cooperatives and LLCs, it's becoming a rather accepted practice that co-ops would adopt that form, and in particular, when it is the co-op's objective to be for-profit and not for-profit. ULU is Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative is a for-profit enterprise, not a non-for-profit. And so that's the structure we take, and we are formatted so that we can have members anywhere in the world. We currently have members, the bulk of our members in the U.S., we have members in Canada, members in the U.K., Bermuda, and Haiti, but we can have members everywhere in the world. And the idea is that if we have businesses, let's say, for instance, in the Cameroons or in South Africa, then we want to have at the base of those business a large stakeholder collective. In other words, members who are the workers and who are the consumers and other services that would need to be in place to support and to sustain and to protect that business enterprise. So an LLC, a limited liability company, is our structure.
And I have a few questions on some of the things you just said. On the membership and the voting. Membership and members and when they have the opportunity to vote, is this meeting an annual meeting or is it monthly meetings? And also, since you have members that are located in different areas, is it going to take place at a physical place or is it done via phone or mail-in?
At this point, it's done face-to-face once a year. This will be our 3rd annual meeting coming up March the 19th of this year in Atlanta. There are provisions in the operating agreement to deal with electronic voting, but we're not there yet. Okay. And so members who choose to participate and who are current in their membership dues, they're having to come to Atlanta. Last year, we had one of our members fly in from Japan. We also had other members come in from Bermuda and other parts of the United States. But right now, we're only able to handle face-to-face voting. But again, in in the not too distant future, we will be forced to allow for participation electronically for our members who are scattered throughout the world.
Okay. And for the distribution, just want to get your idea and projection in the future. Do you project that the distributions would be monthly, quarterly, or yearly, depending on the enterprise? It's going to be yearly distributions?
Yearly.
Okay.
See, what we project is that collectively, all of us, we're talking about thousands, tens of thousands, and potentially millions of members and persons who actually have equity holdings in the company. And so, about lost my train of thought. But yearly distributions. But the main thing I wanted to say is that we will own, and we're projected to own, many businesses in almost every industry, whether that's a business that started up by us, whether it's an acquisition, a straight-out acquisition, or whether it's an acquisition that enfolds one of our members, or whether it's a partnership. But we envision having hundreds and eventually thousands of business enterprises that are owned collectively by all of us. Now, each of the businesses would be managed by the workers who actually work there and who are in that local community, but those workers do not own that local enterprise by themselves. They own it in tandem with all of the other members globally. Now, when that individual business, let's say it's in Philadelphia, matures and begins to generate a profit, then the workers there, in addition to their salary, may get a bonus. But the revenue that's generated, we would call excess capital or profit, is the profit of the total enterprise. And so again, the base would be many different businesses, but we have a particular model that we feature on our website.
And I have two other things to say. I want to make a quick statement for anyone that's listening to this program tonight and just heard what Brother Hekima has said about the structure and the cooperative type of businesses, and also the members or the employees of the cooperative getting bonuses. There are European-owned cooperatives in this United States that are operating in such a manner. And I just want everyone to be clear and to understand this. When you have someone that's working, a member or an employee that's part of the cooperative, but they're working and they're knowing that they are getting a benefit out of what they do every day toward the company, and they're going to get a benefit out of it because they have an ownership in it, they work more diligently, they're more productive, and they're also happier also because they have a stake in what's happening. So I just want to put that out there. My follow-up question for you, Brother Hekima, is since you have people that are going to be that are outside the United States, you named Japan, I think you said Canada and a couple other places. What I want to ask, in the equity ownership units, okay, or the equity ownership units, when people want to contribute and to get an equity share unit, is it done in U.S. dollars only, or is there a conversion ratio of someone who's going to be paying in Japanese yen, for instance?
It's based on the U.S. dollar at this point.
Okay.
Only.
Okay. Thank you for your answer, and we're going to move on. I think you hit 5 already based on some of your statements. 6, cooperative focus on opening and operating businesses in local communities that provide needed goods and services, create new jobs, stimulate additional business activity, and yield a fair profits. I basically think you went over that with the different industries. Are there any particular industries that you believe when ULU has enough capital, is there any particular industries that you will think they want to start off with first?
Yes. I had a discussion a little bit earlier today with a brother who's a farmer here in Georgia, and he just left a conference or convention of sustainable farmers in Kentucky. And I said to him, I'm thinking that in terms of the most valuable real estate, it may be shelf space. In other words, our black farmers very often suffer because they do not have markets, energetic, welcoming markets where they can bring their products, goods to show and to have the potential for them to move. So our first business enterprise, well, it may not be our first business enterprise. We may start a smaller one before, but the one that we feature is what we call the Us Lifting Us Market and Exchange. This is an outlet mall for products, goods, and services owned and controlled by our people globally. We're talking about an edifice on the size of 125 to 175,000 square feet, the size of a regular Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot. And what we will be doing is securing the space, doing leasehold improvements, and retrofitting it and managing it such that there will be any number of things that go on underneath the roof. For instance, a movie theater / event hall, office space for rent, commercial kitchens, commercial canneries, commercial coffee roasting, a large number of stores, booths, tabletop space, a large area cordoned off, we call a shopping cart environment, primarily things that will be there on consignment, a farmer's market, a weekly auction, entertainment, ongoing education, financial services through a credit union and eventually a bank or banks, business incubator. So any number of things that would be going on in the space at the same time or, as it's scheduled. So we know that there is pent-up creativity and energy and need in our people for a marketplace. So ULU's first strategy is to build a profit center around owning the marketplace. Us Lifting Us will derive its revenue from rents, fees, and percentages that went through the cash register for some of the commodities that were housed there. We would own the space, of course, so that the fees for events, the movie, the commercial kitchens that will be open 24 hours a day for vendors and other product manufacturers to use, because very often they're not certified kitchens available to us. So there are several revenue-generating aspects of this, but the idea is that we would format the marketplace as a profit center and proliferate these kinds of marketplaces around the country. Not all of them would be at the scale of 150,000 square feet. Some of them may drop down to 70 or 60 or 50,000 square feet. But our first, and the beautiful thing about this particular model is that right out of the bat, you're looking at upwards of 100 jobs. You're looking at involving other businesses that are already established in the community and also creating a format and a scenario and an environment for the creation of new businesses. And so the marketplace, and hopefully I mentioned the farmers market. I may not have mentioned the farmers market.
Yeah, you did. You did.
And thrift as well. So this then begins to be a favorite outlet for brothers and sisters in the local area, in the regional area, and then for some products and services that are global. We have a member that imports chocolate from Ghana, also furniture from Ghana, bedroom sets or kitchen, living room furniture that's made out of mahogany or some of the other hardwoods. So there can be any number of products, goods and services that come into the marketplace from near and far. We had an experience several years ago, less than 5 years ago, where on the opening day for the professional baseball team in Atlanta was also the same weekend that the Final Four was held in Atlanta, and the vendors who for many years have made most of their revenue that weekend and had already ordered products and were loaded to do business, a black-controlled local administration cut a deal with a mass marketer from outside of our community and barred these brothers and sisters from marketing products, even though they had spent thousands of dollars in inventory. And all across the country, our vendors and other purveyors are being squeezed out of favorable environments to market their products. So that's our major business model. But of course, when you do what we're talking about, you can automatically begin to think of secondary cooperatives in transportation, in manufacturing, in energy, in almost every industry that you could think of, hospitality. So we anticipate that the collective, that all of us together would own many businesses in many industries, and those businesses in many cases will be in partnership with already existing businesses to do some very creative things in terms of creating new businesses, collective buy-in, or whatever arrangements would strengthen the overall community. And we think this kind of structure begins to ignite the new black economy in a way that individually owned business enterprises alone cannot do. Of course, we have Tyler Perry here in Atlanta, very successful, and we often say that if we had 1,000 Tyler Perrys in Atlanta, of course it would be a boom, a plus, but it would not necessarily create and sustain an independent black economy. And so we think that the strategy that we're laying out allows us to begin to, in a systematic way, build and sustain that new black economy. So the first model is the marketplace, not Walmart, not Kmart, but the ULU Mart. And it should be something that when you come to a city where there's an ULU Mart, even if you don't want to spend any money, you want to be there. Mm-hmm. The sound, the vibration, the energy of an African marketplace under this roof and into the outdoors with entertainment, with all the things that would be happening, it would be a tragedy for any person coming to those. If he's an African and not visited, even if he didn't have a dime to spend. So we want to create that kind of an edifice.
We're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, this evening in conversation with Brother Hekima, Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative, the 10-point plan for the new black economy. If you didn't catch the program from the beginning, it'll be up on timeforanawakening.com. That's timeforanawakening.com. Just put it in your address bar. You'll see last week's program is up for podcast, and if you didn't catch the program in its entirety, this program will be up too, so you can hear all of what's being said, the important news, and how you can get involved. Brother Hekima, before we left for break, you were dealing with point 6 of the economic plan. And let me read that again. The cooperative focuses on opening and operating. I'm sorry. The cooperative focuses in on opening and operating businesses in local communities that provide needed goods and services, create jobs, stimulate additional business activity, and yield a fair profit. It's really imperative that our people understand the gravity of what you're saying, because we looking to the system, gatekeepers of white supremacy, the Democrat or Republican Party to provide jobs for our people, those days are long gone. They have let black folks know that they don't intend to give black men, women, or children jobs. It's double-digit inflation in the majority of these cities. Young people's unemployment is off the charts. It's imperative that we come together to come up with ideas to provide an economic foundation for our own people. Talk about how important that is, Brother Hekima. And I got a little follow-up behind that.
Yeah, it's really critical. It's more than financial. It's psychological. It has spiritual implications. When you, as a father or mother, look into the eyes of a child or grandchild, and you both know that someone else controls the destiny of your lives and the life of your people, spiritually and psychologically, that's not a good place to be. And so it's so very important. I just use as an example, I mentioned a cooperative, a very successful cooperative in the Basque region of Spain. Today, at this period, they started in 1956, and yearly they're doing about $50 billion in business. When you have $50 billion a year moving through your operations, you can do some very creative things with that money to secure not only your business standing in the environment, but you can do some other creative things. For instance, this group of individuals in the Basque region of Spain were persecuted, and they had to go underground to maintain their language. At a point, they were called the niggers of Spain, again persecuted. But now they own banks. They own one of the largest supermarket chains in the area. They have insurance companies, apartment complexes. They hold a university. They own manufacturing plants. They are the manufacturer of the largest manufacturer of home appliances in their part of the country, but they export them to other places in the world. So when you are able, and when we're able to harness and direct through business ownership with a group-owned platform, then you're able to capture and redirect a sizable part of that flow that traditionally went beyond you, and now it's within your ability to direct some of that. I know from a political standpoint, we talk about the Koch brothers and other business formations that affect policy and influence the outcome of elections because they got the money to do so. And so it's so important in terms of the quality of life that we can build and sustain for our people. And of course, I'm an old head. I'm in my 70s now. But as a child of the 60s, it wasn't long-lived, of course. But I remember little brothers and sisters, 3, 5, 6 years old, with the little fist raised, and they would address everybody as brother and sister. But at another point, they would spit on the ground and say, well, I ain't your brother, you ain't my sister, when things turned. So with us controlling the economics of our community and also supporting some of those institutions, particularly institutions that affect our young people, we can not only create the jobs, but create the atmosphere that is nurturing, that is protective. And so, when you control the economics of your community, of course, we're never going to control everything. We're talking about a secondary economy within the larger American economy. Every economy is a sub-economy to the global economy. So there's no shame in controlling that which you can control. I submit to you that when we talk about Black Wall Street, and by the way, I went to college in Durham, North Carolina, which, that community is also talked about as a Black Wall Street as well. But when we look at those communities and we talk about replicating those communities, we often forget that we did business with each other in our own container. That's different from what is happening now. When we do business with each other, it's within the broader container. There is no cultural container, no sub-economy within which we are doing business. And if we don't also pay attention to what is required to build the container back and not just simply support each other, then all of those dollars will quickly flow back to the dominant purveyors, the dominant culture, and other subcultures who set up shop in our community. So that whole, and by the way, the ULU model, before there is a dividend or a return on investment, there must be a distribution to charity and endowment. So it's a liken to buying a bushel of apples and eating them up and having to go back and buy another bushel of apples and eating them up. It's analogous to that and what it means to plant the apple tree. So the businesses that we set up have a social impact even before there's a return on investment. That's built into our operating agreement. And so, that is a feature and a facet of what we are talking about that we don't often talk about.
Let's go to 404 area code. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, brothers, this is Wes. How y'all doing?
How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good, my brothers. Hey, my brother, I heard you on another show in Atlanta. I didn't ever get in contact with you, but I got a couple of questions, man. Did y'all want to co-op and join some of these black farmers? Georgia, good farm state. Are y'all hooking up with the black farmers around here?
Oh, yeah. There are farmers who are actually members of Us Lifting Us, who are owners in this format. And so, yes, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives is housed here in the city where we are. And so there is every opportunity to connect. Of course, we're not purchasing farmland and we're not going out and doing farming. What we're doing is preparing a marketplace that we would invite those products and into, so that they're able to move those products to the ultimate consumer much more aggressively.
Okay, I want to invest. I want to invest, man. Where y'all located at down here in Atlanta? I live in Norcross.
We're located in Southwest Atlanta. We have in terms of a physical location, we're at 3079 Camelton Road in Southwest Atlanta. We share space with the African Community Centers for Unity and Self-Determination.
Okay.
You would need to call. Our phone number is 404-592-2780.
Okay, can you repeat that again for me one more time, brother?
404-592-2780.
2780.
Correct.
Okay, I'm gonna be in contact with you, man. Cause I want to invest, man. I'm an electrician, and I'm getting old, and I don't like working in the cold. So what I do, I work in the summer and spring months, and then I'm from the sun, black man. So I stack my money and hibernate during the winter time. So I'm looking for something to do in the winter months, man. But that's the way God has showed me how to do this, man. But I'm gonna be in contact with you, man. I'm gonna call you. I want to invest some money and just be like a capital investment or something like that. You know what I mean?
Love to talk with you. Thank you, brother.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Brother Ridge and Brother Elliot. I'll holler at y'all. Peace and blessings.
Okay.
Thank you for your call,
thanks, Brother Wes.
Brother Hekima,
Yes, sir.
you talked about the farmers and you being involved in the Southern Cooperative before the genesis of Us Lifting Us. Myself and Brother Ridge got involved with African American farmers because my dad gave me the idea to do it. We reached out to several different people: Ralph Page, John Boyd, Gary Grant, who was very instrumental in setting us up and putting us in contact with other farmers. We did several shows on the plight of the African American farmers and had several of your brothers in your state, Eddie Slaughter, Lucius Abrams, Ridgely Muhammad, that was part of the program to let us know exactly what's going on. We developed a small network of farmers coming from South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, up to Philadelphia. We had arranged open-air markets with interested community organizations and churches. The one thing that was a hindrance is what you mentioned earlier about having some type of clearinghouse or warehouse for what we were doing at the time was dealing with the farmers. And that goes back to the thing that I raised earlier, which will be a challenge in itself, because I'll give an example. In the city of Philadelphia, you have 4, and it might be more than that, but I can think of 4 offhand mega churches that generate, I would arguably say, millions of dollars, that can easily pool their resources, pool their money to develop a clearinghouse in the city of Philadelphia. It wouldn't be difficult, especially if the churches got behind an initiative.
Right.
Because, you know, in talking with the farmers, they all express that the salvation for African American farmers are in the cities where our people are, because we can buy their food if we make some type of stipulations or arrangements for them to bring their food here. If you look in our inner city communities, you have these bodegas that have been set up by other people, Jewish markets that was there at one time, now they done left the community, Asian markets selling a lot of substandard produce to our people. Our farmers can bring these things into these cities. So I'm glad that you're talking and you come from the background of dealing with African American farmers, because it's imperative that whatever we do, we take the farmers with us. Talk about that. Give us a little bit more of your spin on that.
As you know from your experience in bringing the farmers to Philadelphia, and of course Reverend Al Sampson and bringing the farmers to Chicago, and all the other, and just the farmers in the South who cut deals with Whole Foods or whoever, they simply, we do not own sufficient shelf space to accommodate their needs and our needs. And if we don't plan for that and bring that floor space, shelf space, store space into being and under our control, then we're going to continue to lose acreage. But if we're able to create the marketplace, then our farmers can hold on to their land. There's other land that they can acquire. We can reverse the trend. But you're correct. Connecting those rural communities to the cities is where it's got, we've got to strategically do that. There are counties, cities and counties where the sheriff is black, the school board's black, the mayor is black, the chief of police, the fire chief is black. Everybody's black, and there are no Europeans to speak of. But there's also no industry. There's no jobs.
You're talking about Philadelphia, and that's a major city. That's a major city. Not Philadelphia, Mississippi, but Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yes. Okay, but when we have the capacity to set up a value-added assembly plant or packaging for farm goods, and where we can create jobs in those rural areas for products that are headed towards the cities, or products that are grown in Haiti or in the Cameroons or in South Africa or
Ethiopia, wherever they may be grown, and to involve our people, and ultimately those products be sold in the markets in the U.S. and in Europe, then we can begin to, in particular in this environment, we can begin to reverse the land loss situation that we're currently facing, and we can do it. I mean, it's really not. It's simple. I don't mean to undermine it in terms of the fact saying that it's not work. It is worked, but if we take the position, well, let me say this. The first thing that we did after emancipation, when we came off those plantations, we went to each other and we formed mutual aid societies and we pooled our resources. Mm-hmm. And not only did we create mutual aid societies in the areas of insurance and burials, but we also pooled our resources to create those economic communities in those towns throughout this country. I submit to you now that we are in the throes of a second emancipation. We, spiritually and psychologically, we're coming off the plantation. And really the only place we got to go is to each other. But we have got to understand that, Brother Claude talks about group economics. We got to take that further. We got to talk about group-owned economics. Now, that doesn't mean that all of us are going to be involved in a group-owned enterprise. But just to give you a sense of scale, based on the ULU model, for every 1,000 members who acquire at least one co-op unit, that's $1,000, that's $1 billion in the aggregate. We remember in 95 there were more than a million black men assembled in Washington, D.C. I submit to you that every last one of those brothers had the capacity to go back to their communities and to engage in a process whereby they would scrape together at least $1,000 each. 1 million men with $1,000 each, that's $1 billion. Given the right format, the right plan, we can do that over and over and over again. But we can't give the money away. We've got to invest that money in for-profit enterprises that create jobs, to stimulate the local economy and do the things that we have talked about, including a fair opportunity for a return on those investments. In other words, what's in it for me? And the church can become a member and purchase 100 units. The National Association of Black Psychologists can join and purchase some units. In other words, membership can be not just individuals, but that begins to lay out what the recording that you played a little earlier about Dr. King in terms of pooling our money. That what we are laying out is an exact method for how we can pool that money, put it into a democratic process where there is no big I's and little E's. We elect leadership, and leadership can only be in a position for 3 years. It's a rotating situation, and those persons who are in those seats have to vacate those seats. And if the membership chooses to put them back, that's good. But those seats have to be emptied during the process. And so it's a situation where we're going to have to develop trust in saying that what we want to happen is our best minds, whether that's individuals or firms, that would come to provide the guidance and the services. And so overall, in terms of the land and production, we've got to involve everything that is a resource in terms of building and maintaining that black economy.
Brother Hekima, we see earlier last year that the United States supposedly normalized relations with Cuba after years of embargoes and ostracizing Cuba. And some of our people looked at it like they were watching a tennis match, just back and forth. Mm-hmm. But I think that what you're talking about is a mindset change, because that is an opportunity for our people. It's a huge diaspora of our brothers and sisters down in Cuba that have developed other ways to market products because they weren't marketing them here. So they developed other international markets. That's a way where we can tap into that market, the Cuban market of our brothers and sisters, to start generating international trade and income. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's going to take grassroots organizations like yours and minds that think like that are involved in your organization to spearhead this. Because if we look towards these politicians, especially the black ones that's in office, to develop any of these things, it's not going to happen. They're not interested in doing anything that'll make better their community, because they're afraid of a white backlash and they want to be representative of all people. But if we understand what we're dealing with this government in the United States, when it's representative of all people, that means that black folks get the short end of the stick or no stick. So we have to look at, I just want your opinion on the potential of the normalized relations with Cuba, being that we're talking about them in particular, and how that could affect us.
Yes. Who knows the opportunities? We had a discussion maybe a year and a half ago with brothers and sisters in Colombia. And these were brothers and sisters who were indigenous, had that status, and they owned tracts of land, large tracts of land, that were mutually held by the community. They had gold mines, they had natural gas, they had oil, and they were looking, at least exploring, if the African in America couldn't partner with them to hold off the jackals, because they were being attacked and put in compromising positions. They weren't even able to market their gold on the open market. They were forced to go through brokers. And so as we begin to look at the opportunities right around us in the Americas, those of us here, African Americans, if we pool our money and set up agencies and the capacity to go to Cuba, to go to Brazil, wherever we're, to go to Suriname, and look at what's possible and what's available, I think our minds may be blown. And so we just have to match our relative wealth that we have here with the creativity and ingenuity of our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world. And, we would be in error if we only thought local. We've got to think international. And for instance, one of our members is developing a scenario by which he hopes to bring coffee and take it to the streets, so that the young brothers and maybe sisters who at the end of every day would have cash in their pocket, but their commodity would be coffee produced in Haiti or the Cameroons or wherever. And one of the things I didn't know, but part of I knew, but coffee is the second most traded commodity in the world, only outstripped by oil. And last year or the year before, it was the number one commodity in the world. And so one of the things that it was told to us, and we're being taught, that coffee is a black thing, that the original plant, the coffee plant, comes from Ethiopia. The tea sipping ceremony that is famous and recognized as an Asian ceremony actually originated in Ethiopia. And as our people travel and there was no coffee, they just introduced tea, but they kept the same ceremony. So again, that kind of thinking laced into good business practices, conservative prudent business practices, that don't squander our combined holdings, there's nothing that we can't do. There's nothing that we can't do. And I would say that 90% of the opposition is in our heads. It's not in the real world. It's our fear, our inhibitions, what we call fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it's not real in the real world. Now, that's not to say that we won't encounter opposition. We will. And you got to know that. But it's got to be set up in this scenario based on their system. In other words, an LLC is not something we created. That's something that's ubiquitous in the business environment globally, not just in America. And you got to deal with the IRS and the other regulators and the insurance and all the licensing. You got to go through that, and you got to be on top of that, and you got to stay on top of that. But there is enough latitude that we can do some fantastically progressive things, again, if we don't trip ourselves up. And typically that's who trips us up, ourselves, our fear, our and it's not so much ambivalence. We want to do it, but we've convinced ourselves that that there are giants in the land, in our promised land, and they're figments of our imagination.
Brother Hekima, I know that what you have laid out in your think tank with the 10-point appeal and a plan, you had to have organization, structure, people who were committed to putting this thing together, even for you to be able to come on our program or other programs, even have any sort of conversation. And I know that you have something at the very end that talks about black people and black people alone hold the key to the gateway leading to their freedom, philosophy and opinions of Marcus Messiah Garvey in 1923. What I like to ask you is that when we talk about a natural economy, I know that what we're talking about, there has to be dollars involved. This is just one of my pet peeves I want to put out there. When you talk about a natural economy where there's no money involved, but brothers and sisters still have to deal with each other, look out for each other's best interest, and work together cooperatively, you're looking at that action word, that verb called love. And bartering, volunteering, your services, the best, is that going to be one of the things that are going to be the glue to keep anything we're doing until we get our enough dollars invested? Is that really the glue that we need? We need to be a sacrificing people for our children and for our future generations. For sure.
Especially now in the beginning. But ULU is structured to pay its way. But it first got to get off the ground. So those of us on the board, we're not just a board and look at our fiduciary responsibilities. We're actually workers, and we commit a good many hours every day and every week to the task. But ultimately, we've really got to pay for our way. In other words, we value compensating individuals, brothers and sisters, for work, for positioning ourselves to help fund additional institutions, because there's enough money or potential economic revenue that if we structure it properly, we can be in a position where we don't depend on volunteers. I think that's been a weakness in the past. Except that we had volunteers, we really couldn't do anything. We've got to move from that. So ULU is not a not-for-profit environment. It is a for-profit environment, and we're not going to succeed heavily dependent on volunteers. we want to salary and attractive salaries at that, people who do work. By the way, I would be remiss not to say to your listening audience, I'm sitting here with my One of a Million T-shirt on. So I'm a part of the movement as well.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear about that. Awesome. I know those that are listening are happy to hear about that, and we're happy about it. I'm definitely going to be joining the movement. I like what I hear. That's why I was asking a lot of questions. I read a lot of information, and to me, this is the type of stuff that is out the box a little bit, but you don't hear this in mainstream. Mm-hmm. But those are the type of things that I think that we need to start investing our money in, and I just think it's just necessary for you to do that. I'm not telling everybody that they need to do it, but I think those that talk about we need to start doing cooperative economics, well, here's an opportunity, and what I think what we should do is when you invest your time, your energy, and your money in us lifting us, you should get together with your friends and family and start doing susus, boxes, and things of that sort, because that's going to be able to help you generate money to pay off some bills. But, the thing, I find, we have many well-intentioned people they're wide awake, but they have to still deal with life's pressures, having enough food to eat, paying bills and all that. And even our well-intentioned people, when you have that in your mind, it's hard to stay focused at all the time. Yeah. And I think we need to start pushing that instead of having all this foolish conversation and talk within our families. Even if it's not about money, we need to start getting together with our friends and family and start just having these type of discussions. Because, a lot of times you have friends and family that they're struggling socially, mentally, spiritually, physically, and sometimes we don't know because of that pride thing. And I think, just having this conversation and having conversations like this, I think it would help you. And I think if you're a man in your family, you should start having these sort of conversations and dialogue, especially with the younger people in your family, because I think it's very important for us when you talk about international trade, export and import. A lot of our children, they don't see the necessity of them going to school or why they should go to school. But learning foreign languages and things of that sort, if you're dealing with export and import, we want our children to learn different languages, because if you're going to be dealing with people in foreign cultures or different areas, if you want to export gold or import gold, you want to deal with something with coffee, the more languages, the more adept that you are at learning about a different society, a different culture, the more you're going to be able to help yourself, your family, and your people. And I think that's very important for us to start having, our children understand the world is more than just the United States. The world is just more than the city you come from. It's more than the block that you come from. This is a wide world, and there's a lot of opportunity out here in this world that we need to start letting our children know that there's more than becoming an NBA player. There's more than becoming a football player. There's more than becoming a hip-hop artist. This world is wide, and there's a lot of opportunity that's accessible to us, and we need to start teaching our children these things. And Brother Hekima, I want to tell you, I appreciate what you're doing. We need more. We need younger people that have the energy to start getting involved in different movements. Yes, and to be able to garner the wisdom from a brother Hekima. And we need brothers like. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we do have a good many young people. The majority of ULU members are young. I was listening at one of your recent or past interviews with Antar. And Antar's father and myself, as a matter of fact, my name and my wife's name was given to us by Chokwe. Wow. So we go way back. He was on my defense team in 1971 after a terrible shootout in Mississippi that became known as the RNA 11 case. But I just simply remind us of the Jackson Rising and the efforts that Chokwe initiated in having a discussion about cooperative economics. And of course, there's the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland with the Chase Reserve, the Cleveland Clinic, and other institutions that are. So the discussion of economic democracy is being had around the world in almost every continent and every country. And so we would be remiss not to have that discussion and to develop approaches that are 21st century, that are in fact what people are doing or attempting to do almost everywhere on the planet. And the structure that we are is not foreign. It's very strategic and proven to be successful in other cultures. So we add a little twist here and a little twist there, but it's their discussions. If you go on YouTube and discuss worker-owned cooperatives, democratic economic democracy, there are discussions everywhere, and we would be really left behind if we didn't think group ownership and using the tools that are available to take control of the economics of our community is there. And we don't have anybody to fault but ourselves if we don't take the opportunity to do so.
Thank you very much for that, brother. And I'd like to say one thing before I let Elliot get in. It's very important for people that are listening to this program tonight to understand if you're not manufacturing anything, if you're not manufacturing anything, you're ready behind the 8 ball. We have to
Right?
Yeah, we lost him, huh?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
These are all. I was just stating about manufacturing. I'm sorry, I got cut off for a minute. Manufacturing, it creates jobs. We can't tell our young people, the people that are not working, that they need to support us if we're not creating things. Instead of watching the television all the time and reading books. Reading books is good. Let's start creating things. Our minds are there. I told a young brother just yesterday, I want to say this very brief, that, we have a lot of people that manufacture things on a small scale, and what they're not able to do when they get an increase in a customer base. That customer base increase, they can't go to any manufacturing plant if they're doing stitch and yarn type of outfits or anything where they might need labeling. They don't have enough product to be able to go to any of these white manufacturers to pay that amount of money. So that's something that we need to think about, because we have a lot of people who make clothes, that do all types of different things, but they don't have enough money to take it to the next level. So that's something that we need to think about, because when you have this, these are all things. Small businesses is what keeps the economy going. And I just want to put that up. And the idea that Brother Hekima has put out there is something that needs to be taken seriously. If you're looking for a different avenue, if you're tired of what you've been hearing out there, this is an avenue that you need to go on the Us Lifting Us website. Check it out, read information, sign up. Get your $50 together. If you want to make a stronger investment, get $1,000 together. If you can't get the $1,000 together, you get a local investment group. It could be your family, your friends, and you can start off buying an investment unit for $1,000. All you have to do is get 10 people together. This is the way you have to think cooperatively to get things done. So go to that site, usliftingus.com.
There's a small community in Camden that's doing that as we speak.
Good.
They are modeling their LLC after our LLC, and they are becoming members and pooling their monies to purchase units. But they're doing it as a group so that they are able to build the relationships and look at things that they may be able to impact in their local community while they're contributing to a global business model as well.
Brother Hekima, email us that information of who they are, because that's right across the bridge, and we'd like to get them on the program.
Okay.
Well, we listened this evening to practical, so just like that segment I played the day before Dr. King was murdered, practical solutions that we can all do. We've heard some tonight. Brother Hekima, give out information where people can get in contact with you, where they can log into the site, anything you want to do.
Yes. Our website is usliftingus.com, usliftinus.com. Also, our phone number, and we'd love to speak with you, 404-592-2780. Again, 404-592-2780. And when you go to our website, if you click on the YouTube icon, there's some very informative YouTube videos on our channel that go into a little bit more detail than we went into on this program. Also, on our website, there's a play button that says, "At last, a winning plan." And if you click on that one, turn your speakers up, it'll start talking to you and take you through 12 slides. And on the 12th slide, if you fill out a little form with your name and your email address and submit it, we'll send you, this is even before you become a member, we'll send you our 22-page operating agreement and our 4-page values and ethics document. We want those key documents in your hand so that you can make an informed decision, because when you do, in fact, fill out your paperwork and pay your $50, you're joining as a partner in this venture with us, and we don't take that lightly. And so, usliftinus.com.
I want to thank you for being with us, sir, and we'll be talking to you soon. Don't forget that email, though.
The email is info@usliftinus.com.
Okay, we'll be in touch with you.
Peace.
Thank you, Brother Hekima. Peace, my brother.
Thank you.
We're gonna take a brief break, and we're gonna come back to wind up the program. Reg, it was an interesting discussion we had with Brother Hekima. The past month, we've had different organizations on here that are trying to change the mindset of our people and to move our people forward with practical solutions that we can all do to change this dynamic. You've heard them on our program. You're not going to hear them on Tom Joyner. You're not going to hear them on Steve Harvey. You probably won't hear him on Al Sharpton because he's too busy touting the Democratic Party. So we're going to utilize our program to get this information out to all of our people as much as we can.